You buy a domain, you push wrong service worker to the production, you buy another domain. Hi folks, let's talk about service workers and how to automate them today.
Yeah. Hey, welcome everybody to the meetup of the Frontend RheinMain. I hope to say it well. Jan, you can correct my German. That is super basic right now. And welcome to our community. We are really happy to be here. We hope soon to be in person, joining in one of our meetups. And of course, we wish to have these events with food and more really stuff to share. And yeah, welcome here. Right now, we are here in the metro region and inside the Frankfurt RheinMain, inside Germany. We are really happy to, if you have any questions or you have any question for our speakers in this night, you can send it directly in the chat inside the YouTube and also in our social networks. You can follow us on Twitter. And let's start with the show. So as we know, the talk today is regarding the service workers and also related with the progressive web apps. So thank you for coming, Maxim. It's a pleasure to have you here. The stage is yours.
Before we start, actually, just a short note. So if you're watching us on YouTube currently, feel free to post your comments and questions in the chat all the time. We will watch this and we have a conversation afterwards. Or maybe Maxim can react on some questions during the talk. Let's see. We are spontaneous and agile, right? So, and a short announcement will be that really you should save the date already for June. On the 24th of June, expect a real cool highlight talk if you love CSS, and who does not love CSS most of the time, actually. At least, right? This will be a really highlight thing. We will announce the details soon, I think next week. And yeah, stay tuned. And now enjoy the evening. And the stage is yours, Maxim.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the intro. Thanks for invitation, folks. And it's my great pleasure to speak for your community. And as we discussed on backstage a few moments ago, I really can't wait, folks, to come to you in person. So let's hope that we can make it someone soon.
Oh yeah.
But today we are online, and let's talk about how to build better web applications, which will work both online and offline. And of course, we need some help. If I find a simple description of my today's session in just one sentence, this will be something like how to improve your web application performance and user experience while maintaining great, pleasant developer experience. So everyone is happy, our customers, users, clients, and we as developers ourselves. My name is Maxim Salnikov. I stream directly from city of Oslo, capital of Norway, where I reside and work in Microsoft. And I'm big fan of developer communities. I run meetups like this myself, and just a couple of hours ago, I organized event for Frontend meetup. We discussed GraphQL. I organized conferences. I'm a Google developer expert and try to spread the knowledge around web technologies. let's stay connected. You can find me on Twitter, webmaxru. I think this is the simplest way for us to stay in touch. My direct messages are always open, so feel free to ping me after this session if you have some questions about Workbox, progressive web apps, service workers, modern web, and cloud. Okay, what's on our agenda today? We'll have quite a brief intro or reminder or refresher what PWA is. We'll discuss why the service worker is quite challenging to build by hands. And by the way, this job from the beginning of the event is part of this slide deck, and dedicate main part of the session to Workbox, to the ways how to build your progressive web application right here, right now, without any further waiting and delay, but yeah, keeping great developer experience. So what's going on with PWA? This is, I believe, more than 5 years old concept, and its history is always like a roller coaster with ups and downs. And if we check the headlines from maybe the last half of a year, we'll see something like Firefox is dropping PWA support. Well, they decided to not to remove some features related to installability of the web application, but in reality these features were always hidden by flag, and maybe not so many folks ever noticed that they existed. Anyway, this is not super cool news for PWA. On the positive side, it's super easy to monetize your web applications now if they are progressive and if they are wrapped by a thin native wrapper to push them to Google Play Store, and then you can connect APIs for selling digital goods. Isn't it perfect? Because one of the questions I always receive is about how to monetize your progressive web applications. Here's the answer. On bad side, and the recent conference for developers, Apple announced that they will, let's say, postpone implementation of some APIs which are part of maybe extended progressive web apps family. Majority of these APIs are somehow related to hardware features, and they decided to not implement them because it's easier to build sort of digital profile for a particular device, to do fingerprinting, and this way to break your privacy. Well, it's their decision. And to balance with more good news, it's even easier now to push your PWA assets without any wrappers to Microsoft Store using PWA Builder special tool. So if we look at these headlines, I personally have a feeling that web was forked, and some browser vendors went for privacy. Some really think about functionality first. Of course, you know, it's in the big picture, it's always a balance, right? But what to do for us, for developers, how to survive in this forked web situation? Well, my answer is following. Let's follow web standards, and all APIs we'll explore today are part of web standards, or at least drafts of web standards, so no proprietary things anymore. And on the technical side, let's implement progressive enhancement. This is actually how we survive in a world of front-end web development, with a whole zoo of devices, browsers, versions, settings, flags, etc., etc. So feature detection, which is core of progressive enhancement, will save us. Now, let's give a super brief intro of what PWA is and what are the pillars. So now, after all these years of marketing PWA as PWA, I see that it's more and more let's say, specified direction. So now when we talk about PWA, we talk about installability of our application. So that means better integration with underlying operating system, and capabilities, what our application can do in terms of functionality. Very big part of PWA is a service worker API or all family of APIs. Very big part of service worker is everything related to networking, to optimizing networking. We can call it like this. And Workbox is exactly on that level of my PWA onion. We can call it like this. Very big part of networking is something related to caching. Caching in multiple ways: pre-caching, runtime caching. Of course, here we talk about smart one, about optimized caching, about caching where we have full control over every single detail straight from our JavaScript code as front-end web developers. Well, to give you some inspiration before we dive into technicalities, I want to present some popularity of the service workers and maybe PWA in general. If you look at stats by HTTP archive, and they scan around 7 million of web addresses, of course this is not full internet, but quite a representative part of it, it says that only 1% of the pages are controlled by service workers, right? Maybe it's not super inspiring number, but anyway, it's growing steadily. There is no plateau yet. If you look at this chart, maybe this number will inspire you more for going and trying PWA service workers and their friends. Almost 1/5 of internet, of course, within this sample is served by service workers. So this 1% of the page actually controls 1/5 of the traffic. That means that quite popular, quite well visited pages are driven by service workers. So that means that big, noticeable, important resources are using this technology. And I don't have any question why do this website use service worker, because it's all about being user friendly. And if we cover one particular part of PWA as a concept and one particular part of what service worker can optimize, I'm talking now about offline readiness, we can improve user experience in multiple ways. For example, the application itself, it can be always available regardless of the connection status. Once visited, this URL is always available on the particular device of particular user. Thanks for smart caching. If our application is consuming some data runtime, and it is consuming some data runtime, I believe it's applicable for 99.9 front-end web applications, we can cache the data we fetch, all this variety of API endpoints, CDN, etc., in a very smart way for later reusage. If our users generate some data while they are offline, intentionally or unintentionally, we have all the tools now to carefully save this data and propagate to our servers automatically. And in a big picture, connection failures and this jumping back and forth online, offline should not break the user flow and should not affect it too much. Luckily, we now have all the tools. If we talk about freshness of our application and data it consumes, we have now APIs to do it automatically in background, something that we well know as users of mobile native applications. Of course, all features of platform, both software and hardware, are for our service, straight from our JavaScript code. Here I talk about, for example, variety of sensors, variety of media capabilities. And all this awesomeness we can use while still preserving the nature of web. Its openness, its linkability, its discoverability, its coolness, after all. If it's so great to build progressive web applications from the user perspective, why not every single web resource is using service worker these days? Well, I have an answer on this as a form of the joke I presented in the beginning of the event. It's complex, and Service Worker API is not the smallest one, not the simplest one, both in implementation and debugging and testing, plus it's live standard, so there are some updates always going on, and we need some help. So let's get this help. Before this, let's understand better what exactly do we want to automate, where exactly do we need some help. In theory, if we create our handmade, homemade service worker, how will this work? And yeah, this session is not 101 on Service Worker API, so this is why this part will be super brief, just to give you a flavor how this API could be used. Service Worker is a JavaScript code, and this is event-driven worker. That means that all the payload is wrapped into some event listener, so it reacts on event. On install event, we write the code. We have to write the code to put some resources into the cache storage. And here I talk about how to implement offline availability of the application itself, or application shell. There is a special term for this. And we definitely don't want this first version to always be cached on the user device, because we update versions of our application, we fix bugs, we introduce new bugs, we introduce new functionality. We definitely need the way to manage the version. So we have to clear old version, we have to put a new one. And then we intercept all outgoing requests for this particular origin where we host our application in the same service worker, where we provide all the logic, what to do with this particular request. Should we direct it to the network as is? Should we try our luck with cache first? And all this ping pong and all possible fallbacks. In multiple guides and articles and blog posts about service workers, you will find approximately similar implementation of how it might look. And the code on the left-hand side of the slide is exclusively to illustrate the approximate number of lines you have to write to implement, let's say, hello world service worker. So no need to try to understand what's going on there. So let's say less than 100 lines, and you'll have something working. Of course, this will lack all the features I listed on the right-hand side. And well, this will not contribute to developer experience as well as to user experience. Because in production, what can happen? We have to think about some possible issues. What might happen with our service worker in production? And there are quite a few of them, even more. This is not the full list, of course. And I here talk about quite simple scenario when we just want to implement application shell, just want to have our application available offline, application itself, without even data it consumes. Still, you can forget something and get a call in the night from your customer saying, why do I see old version on my superwebsite.com? Because I know that we deployed a new one. Are all my clients see the same? What do I have to do? And yeah, it's not the perfect scenario at all. Please understand me correct. I'm not here to say that you don't have to use a Service Worker API manually. It's very interesting API, sometimes complex, and you will get lots of knowledge about how HTTP protocol works, how caching works, etc., if you implement something manually. But I want to give you some tools for, to start your PWA journey right after my session. And it's not a big surprise for me that around 1/3 of all deployed service workers, again, according to HTTP archive, are driven by Workbox, because it gives so much awesomeness to us as developers while we build our application. This is my favorite, this is top of advantages I found for myself in Workbox, and I can start with really well implemented abstraction level. So there is no one big button or method make everything cool. No, don't expect something like this. But there are set of handy modules, set of handy methods within these modules, which will help you to build your dream service worker. Instead of being very imperative, and this is the only way for implementing your homemade service worker, you literally order your code what to do. Here we can use power of declarative approach. So here we describe behavior in many cases. It's modular. It has all possibilities for extensibility. It's well equipped by a set of modules and methods straight out of the box. So maybe you will need to extend it. Definitely not from the very beginning. And powerful tooling. And all we love about web libraries. It's open source. It's under active development by folks from web dev real team in Google and all web community. So feel free to contribute to Workbox. But let's go back to our practical exercise. If you remember, this Hello World service worker to implement application shell is around 100 lines of the code, while in Workbox it's literally one method, pre-cache and route. You see it on your screen, and importing this method from corresponding module. So we create service worker like this with this 2 lines of the code, but yeah, of course we have to do some extra steps. First, Workbox knows nothing about structure of our application and what exactly do we want to pre-cache to have this application shell offline ready. This is why we have to help Workbox a bit. We have to populate this placeholder WB manifest. If we go back to the previous slide, you see there's this parameter for pre-cache and route method. Then we have to bundle the service worker. This is how modern front-end work these days. And after all, we have to register this service worker in our application. And the first 2 steps we want to have on every build of our application, because application is different from version to version. Set of the files and their versions are different from version to version. So it makes sense to constantly rebuild service worker itself. Without any further delay, let's start hacking. Do npm install workbox build, maybe now, maybe after my session. And this way of using Workbox is node module style. There are multiple ways you can use Workbox as a node module, as a Webpack plugin, as a separate CLI. My personal option is this one, and I strongly recommend you to start with this. If it works like a node module, then we have to write a script for running this in Node.js before deploying our application. So this script we will look at now. We are looking at now is for build step. It's not something that you will run in the browser. It's something to build the service worker itself. And we start from the configuration, where we provide source service worker. You remember this 2-liner. Destination service worker, something we want to deploy, and we explain to Workbox how our application constructed by specifying glob patterns. I promise you will find the way to exactly explain which files you need to pre-cache by using glob pattern. This is very powerful and flexible pattern. And then we call one method called inject manifest. Maybe it's a bit confusing name, but what it does is very well explained on that slide. It takes our source service worker and populates this with exact information about our application based on glob patterns in the configuration. So this is more or less file operation, how to change this file to this file. Can we do it manually? Yes, we can. But why, if we have such a powerful tooling like Workbox build module? And you see at the same step, Workbox calculates revision, which is just a hash sum of a particular file for managing versions. What we do next? Bundling. Bundling, and to follow all the best practices from the modern web development, we can also minify this. Here you can use your favorite bundler. I have example about Rollup. We need 3 plugins for having this nice and easy. And the configuration of these plugins is following. Actually, we just have to replace one string to another. And this way we explain to Workbox bundler which mode do we want to have development. And then we have our log in the console populated by very detailed information about what's going on. Or production, where the build is minimalistic and minified, let's say like this. What we'll receive after all these steps? Something like this: minified, uglified, optimized JavaScript code, which is not for us, it's for browser. So no need to try to understand what's going on here. It's just for the illustration. And we just want to integrate all these steps into overall build. So first we build application itself with whatever framework you use, or your own framework. Then you build service worker, and then you bundle your service worker. One very last step is to register service worker in your application. We can rely on the native method from Service Worker API, or we can again ask Workbox for help us. Why? First, it gives some syntax sugar for us, and second, what's more interesting and important, it gives us nice hooks where to put the dialogue about new version of the application is available. I bet you've seen some pop-ups, toasts, dialogues, you name it, in the websites you visited. That means some things about this particular website you are in now. First, it's driven by service worker, Workbox, or other. Second, there is a new version appeared on the website between your previous visit and this visit. So it asks you if you wish to reload the page to have the latest version. Because this version you see right here, right now, was served from the cache, from the local cache on your device. Okay, so now we are ready to deploy everything and test. For test, I created some minimalistic blog application, and you will find the link to source code in the end of this slide deck. So this will look something like this. We have the application open, and we can now test offline mode. And this is an animated GIF. It should start soon. Yes, so we switch to offline mode, we hit reload, we still see the application. What we have as a result works offline. We can safely turn off Wi-Fi, disconnect wired network. This will work. We have managed versions. Workbox will update versions after we deploy the new one, and we have full detailed information in the console log for debugging. That was about application shell. What about the data application is consuming runtime? For example, if we consume some data from CDN or API endpoints, can we get some support from Workbox here to not implement our own routing, to not implement our own strategies? Because when we talk about runtime caching, it's way more complex, it's way more diverse in terms of what kind of strategy of caching we can have for this or that piece of the application. Yes, let's understand how Workbox can help us with these tasks. It all starts with imports of particular modules and classes. I really love this approach. No single byte of unneeded code in our service worker, even before tree shaking and minification on bundle. And then it's the best illustration of declarative approach. What we have, we register route where we say, hey, Workbox, use if the request is outgoing from our application for this pattern, and there are multiple ways how you define the patterns. Here is regexp option. Apply this strategy. Literally, we do not say do this. We say behave like that. For maybe avatars, it's a good idea to have cache first strategy. I don't think that avatars are so often updated, while for other pieces of our application, it might be completely different. For example, if we talk about some list of articles or posts or products, which might be quite dynamic, we can go for network first strategy. We ask Workbox to try its luck with network every time. If we talk about, for example, page of the article of or news or post on our blog, we can be a bit more conservative and go for stale while revalidate strategy. What's this about? It's, I believe, the most advanced caching strategy where we check if this resource, let's say it's JSON, is already in cache. Maybe a user already reached out to this article and we have this JSON pre-cached by Workbox. If it's there, we serve this immediately to the application, and as a result, users see something immediately, and regardless of the connection status, because it's pre-cached on the local device. At the same time, in the background, Workbox goes and check online version of the same resource, and if again, this JSON, let's for simplicity pretend that we serve JSON from our APIs. If it's updated on the server and it checks it has some, then it downloads this and update the version in the cache. But here we have a situation, right? We just served the older version to the user just to have it immediately to surprise user. At the same time, we know maybe after a few seconds that there is a new version, and using broadcast update plugin, we have the possibility to reach out to our application from the service worker to say, hey, if you wish, notify the user about a new version, and maybe we want to show some dialogue saying, hey, there is a new version of this article is available, and then user decide to refresh the page to get it or not. Yeah, it's really case by case, this smart update dialogues, but at least we have this possibility. And if we look at the number of strategies and plugins available out of the box, well, it will cover maybe 99% of your needs when you create a regular web application. If you wish to create your own very custom strategy or extend some functionality using custom plugin, you have all the possibilities, but it's on our next chapter, because now I want to introduce risks. It's new in Workbox version 6, and actually it's just syntax sugar over modules and their methods over something that we explored in our previous on our previous slides, when we, for example, explained how to behave with images or with particular resources. So these are just one-liners of well-configured Workbox modules. So literally, if we have Google fonts on our web application, we can go and set up runtime caching for them. And we have to provide some rules for font files themselves. We have to figure out what kind of URL pattern there. Then actually these font files are served by CSS, which is downloading before the fonts themselves. So we can implement this by hand, or we can use one-liner Google Fonts Cache, and we can even somehow configure this. Like in my example, I provide custom name for the cache storage. Same with images. We can go and explain Workbox how to runtime cache particular resource types, which are images, and which strategy to apply. Or we can use one-liner image cache. And again, here I just illustrate how to configure this. For example, to have maximum 10 entries in the cache, not to overuse this. Same for offline fallback. We can implement it using modules and their methods, or just one-liner. Same with caching of the page, same with caching of static resources. And the latest addition is warming up strategy for runtime resources. So that means that the cache will be pre-populated in the background, which is convenient for multiple scenarios. So this was, let's say, next level of abstraction over modules and their methods. If we go different direction, if we dive a bit deeper into the customization of strategies, what can we do here, and what kind of developer experience do we have on that side? I'm super happy with what Workbox developers gave to us, to web developers, if we need something really custom. So if the set of implemented strategies are not working good for you, just create your own one, which will still be part of your overall Workbox ecosystem, which will still use all the power of this declarative routing, which can use standard plugins. Let's illustrate how to do this. And let's create imaginary strategy called cache network race. And here we say something like this. Hey, Workbox, please serve what came first, either from cache or from network. I believe in the majority of cases, of course, this will be cache who wins in terms of speed of fetching this resource, if you compare this to network request. But still, I believe some scenarios are available when cache can be slow enough to serve resource from the network. So we extend the basic class called strategy by our own class, and we implement a method called _handle, where we pass first request itself. It's an HTTP request with all details included. And also we pass the instance of strategy handler class, which contains very handy methods for us, not to implement everything from scratch. What's on us is just to implement our logic itself without diving too deep into internals of HTTP calls, of cache optimization, etc. So in this simplest scenario, it can look like this. We use fetch and cache put method from this strategy handler class, and we use this is to go to network, and to go to for cache we use another method also provided to us by Workbox. And what's left for us is just to return what came first from this. As a bonus, we have nice possibility to somehow react on the errors. And in this scenario, I believe there are multiple edge cases are available, so it's important for us to process exceptions correspondingly. These are all different scenarios and ways to use Workbox, and it might be a bit cumbersome and maybe even confusing for the beginning to understand what to choose, how to have this decision tree about Workbox usage. So this is why I created this sort of flexibility versus automation diagram. If we want to have maximum flexibility, we create our own strategy. If we want to somehow fine-tune existing strategies, we can create our custom plugins. I believe mainstream way of using Workbox is still using these modules and methods. On the automation side, we can go step further and use recipes, Or I'm not explaining this in this session, but Workbox also has full-scale CLI, which can create service worker for you from scratch. This way, you somehow lose control over what's going on there, but I believe this is the most automatic way to have your service worker. I recommend you to have a look at modules and methods way of the usage. Okay, what's left? To list some useful resources. On this link, AKMS Workbox 6, you'll find demo itself, its source code, and also how to deploy this to Azure Static Web Apps. This is a relatively new way to host your static frontends using Azure Cloud, and it has quite interesting free option to host your frontends and get full automation of deployment of build and everything else. So literally, you push your code to your repo, for example, to GitHub, and in a few moments, you see your application online, your web project online. Also, I would like to invite you all into Slack team I organized a few years ago. Now we are more than 2,000 people there, and this is the largest place on the planet Earth where we discuss progressive web apps, service workers, Workbox, browsers, etc., etc. And what's left? Left to say thank you very much for your attention, and I'm ready to answer your questions, if any.
Thanks, Maxim. Wonderful talk. Really cool. Let's see. We have some questions in the chat. Let me find the first one. Oh, actually, that's nice. Tristan is from Paris, so we have quite an international audience, by the way. This is cool. Yeah, Tristan is asking not so technical questions, but he's interested in the London meetup group about PWA. Maybe you can provide the link later.
Oh,
we'll
yes,
post it in the chat if you like.
It's a very good question. Yes, I will do it on the fly.
Okay.
Yes, actually, London PWA meetup and Oslo PWA meetup are brothers or sisters, and normally in these online times we announce events on both user groups. And yes, so let me. I sent a link to private chat. So Jan or Seth, please share this with our viewers.
Yes, I will share it.
And by the way, you will notice that we haven't had events for a while. The reason is simple. We are always looking for the speakers. If you wish to share your experience, positive or negative, with PWA, we are super happy to onboard you as a speaker. Because yeah, I delivered multiple sessions there, and I really want to give a stage to new folks.
Cool. Another question we have is from Luz Maria. How easy is it to distribute PWAs in Apple Store and Google Store?
There is no simple answer on that. Let's start from let's say the most complex scenario. It's an Apple Store, and here we don't have anything special for PWAs. You have to create a native wrapper, native application, and then in the web view of this application, of course, you can use your PWA, and this will work like a classical web application in web view, something like this. There is no any superpower attached just because of the fact that it's a PWA, but there was a positive news that in the recent betas, or maybe now it's even in production, service worker functionality was available even within web view of this within this native wrapper. It's in very Apple style, was not announced in any documentation. So it's purely folks who experiment with PWA on iOS discovered this. So it's like not official yet, but. So let's say like this, situation is not the best one if you talk about PWA on iOS, but it's getting better, and I'm super happy because of this. If you talk about Google Play Store, you still have to create a native wrapper, but there are special tool for this called Bubble Wrap, which helps you to automate this as much as possible. Maybe we can state it like this. This tool is from Googlers also. That means they are providing all support for having your web experience as a form of your web application. Plus, I will not go into the technical details, but if you wish to propagate your PWA to Google Store, search for TWA term. This is API to help you connect your web application and your Android application. And compared to Apple, all the tools are there for the developers to have proper integration of service worker, to have proper integration of permissions your web part is requesting. For example, if you request subscription to push notifications from your web part, it will be shown to the user like a request from Android itself, like from the native part. So it's indistinguishable from native application in that sense. Plus, as I mentioned at the very beginning of my session, API for selling digital goods is also available since December, I believe. And the best case scenario is Microsoft Store. You just push your PWA there as is. Question from Tristan. Where can we learn best practices for cache busting with PWA when we update our application? I think this is very directly related to the joke I mentioned multiple times, because maybe majority of confusion I see from the developers about progressive web apps is about something wrong happened with caching, and like I have my service worker stuck and I don't know what to do. This is why I think what I can mention from the best practices is to have kill switch, which is service worker, which tries to remove all caches from the device. And if something nasty happened, like you have outdated version of your application and you hit refresh multiple times and nothing happens, you just rename your current service worker to something else, and you rename your kill switch service worker to the service worker name you had before. And then after some time, when users will go and visit your application next time, this kill switch will do its job. So this will clear cache. And then you can start, let's say, a new life of your app. Of course, this will happen gradually. This will happen not for all users immediately, right? People have to visit your application first to have some manipulation in the cache. So nothing is happening automatically. Nothing is happening in background in that sense. And then yes, you can deploy your proper one. I think this is one of best practices I can mention. Or use Workbox. It's battle tested. It's mature version 6, and it's 100% production ready.
Related to this, another comment from Tristan. He thinks, and I totally agree, it's you need to understand service worker at least in a bit more than basic way, maybe before you should use Workbox, right? So this is not just a drop-in tool and there it goes. It requires some to dig into the topic first, right? And he had some troubles understanding how to use it, and I'm not sure. I'm new to Workbox, but maybe you can tell a bit what has improved towards version 6 with like the documentation and the guidance for maybe service worker newbies in a way.
It's evolving gradually, and if there are some breaking changes, they are very well documented, and all notifications go to the developers in advance. Of course, you have to follow the update, and maybe Workbox.js Twitter handle is a good source of these updates. What's new in version 6 is the recipes I mentioned, and some internal refactoring on making our custom strategies and plugins simpler to implement. So if you remember from the slides, we really now have very convenient places where we inject our code to provide some custom things, while we still use internals of Workbox to help us with network requests and work with the cache. But I fully agree that it's a very good idea to understand service worker API, maybe to have some pain first related to debugging, but please do not deploy this to production to stay on the safe side, and then you'll understand magic of Workbox better. But yeah, of course, do not expect that there never were bugs in Workbox. No, from time to time, developers find something and fix it, because it's open source and it's really community-driven project. But in its current state, it's stable.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question that I hear very often. How easy is to integrate Workbox in frameworks like Angular or React?
This is a very good question, and I believe these days we at least start majority of new projects with this or that framework, and we all know joke about framework of the day. Every day something new is appearing. This is why my recommendation is use Workbox as a node module. It's absolutely framework agnostic. So once you have something ready for deployment in your dist folder, you can point Workbox there, and it will do its job by iterating through your distribution, by building service worker, and you will receive ready to deploy file of the service worker itself. It doesn't matter which framework is that.
Okay. Go, Jan, your question.
Can you elaborate a bit on how to write tests, or how Workbox supports me in writing tests, and how complicated maybe it still is to test all these different caching scenarios in order to prevent bugs, or to understand the whole thing at least, right? So how much testing is still needed, and is there any support from Workbox in this direction?
If we tell about automated testing, then situation is not perfect compared to other pieces of our web front-end application, because service worker is running in a completely different environment. So its life cycle is very different from life cycle of our main application, and of course there is a complexity of testing related to this. I'm not sure that Workbox provides any special tools or practices for testing, and even more general, I haven't seen nice tools for testing your service workers. A couple of years ago, there was a project by someone from Pinterest. It was called something like testing service workers, some very, very generic name, where they tried to implement behavior of the browser when they parse and run service worker in Node.js. So they tried to somehow mimic this environment. Of course, not fully what's possible, but I haven't heard too much about development of that project. Maybe it still exists, but yeah, no news from that side. So no good answer for you, unfortunately. Maybe someone from our dear attendees can contribute to that area, because I believe it's completely empty niche these days, and there is a great chance that your project will be very popular if you find this silver bullet on testing service workers.
So it still, in my opinion, involves lots of manual testing with the right dev tools, and when it comes to test it on real devices, still in the year 21 we have sometimes struggle to have it connected properly, and then how to test it correctly, and then how to test hey, does this really work when now this asset is needs to be renewed, or this is still a bit a new challenge. Are there any plans? Do you know of any plans to support a bit more testing?
I haven't heard about anything about automated testing, but if we talk about the manual one, I think the situation is much better, because we have dev tools, and from my personal experience, the part of dev tools dedicated to service workers and all other PWA parts are the most under the most active development. So I literally see new features on every single version of Chromium engine. And I can say that now it's a pleasure to debug your service worker in DevTools, because you have more or less complete information about what's going on. And if we use development mode of Workbox, you remember when we do bundling, we can provide this parameter. We'll have even more detailed information. Literally, Workbox is saying, I received this request, I will react on this using this strategy, and I will serve this file. So developers of Workbox did really great job on helping us.
Really interesting, yeah.
Tristan has another question. Is it interesting to add service worker to static websites deployed on CDN built with static site generators?
Yes, I just tried to find the reasons why it could not be interesting. If we talk about user experience, who cares? Is it static site generator? Is it deployed with CDN or without CDN? If user is offline, they will see offline dyno or server not found or something like this. With service worker, they will see your offline fallback page or offline version of your application. It depends on your use case. And in that sense, it's very important to understand that when we talk about cache in our progressive web apps discussion and service worker discussion, it's not the one we have as a HTTP cache. It's on completely different level. And the cache we use in service workers is something which is fully controllable by us front-end developers using cache API interface. We literally say, take this file and put it into the cache storage. And we can use it either from service worker or from our application itself. Maybe the question was more about if we talk about, let's say, classical SSG websites or web apps, it's like these ones versus single-page applications. Maybe we can look at from that perspective, when we don't have such a thing like application shell, where we dynamically load the content, where we have all static index HTML physically deployed to particular folders on the server on our deployment location. Still, I don't see any difficulty to use service worker with this. We just cache pages one by one, and still Workbox can help us with versioning. So yeah, I think it's also a very interesting scenario.
Yeah. Any last word to add to the session, Jan?
Let me check. I think there are no more questions in the chat. Maybe give some praise to Maxim. It was a really nice introduction to the tool, right? Yeah, and also here it was really. I hope it gave the audience some motivation to try it out and to be maybe a bit less anxious on service workers, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone from today's attendees will go and test Workbox maybe tonight or tomorrow, I'll be happy. I achieved my goal.
Yeah,
cool.
And also thank you for the example that you shared. It looks really interesting what you can do with Azure.
Yes. It's I'm proud of this service. I was part of building this piece of functionality of Azure, and I know that it went through multiple iterations to make it as developer friendly as possible. So also please feel free to try this Azure Static Web Apps. You can register a free Azure account for this to get some credits, and the service itself has quite a generous free plan for your websites. By the way, these days there is huge conferences going on, Google I/O, right? And multiple sessions there are dedicated to PWA, to service workers, and to Workbox in particular. So check the agenda, and if you missed some sessions, you can find them in recorded state. So if you're interested in PWA, please check, because Google I/O and Crop Dev Summit, they are mainstream events where you not only get status of PWA, but also sort of roadmap. And the roadmap is very shiny. So I believe more and more folks will adopt this, and more companies will adopt this.
So it actually is a good idea to take the time which you saved because you use Workbox instead of doing it manually, and invest the time watching Google I/O for maybe on a weekend, right? to get up to date again. Which is good.
For self-care, it's very important these online days not to burn out and to dedicate enough time to family, to friends, to just wellness.
Yeah, sure. Right. And also like the developer wellness, right? To feel better with handling service workers. I have a final question. How many domains did you actually need to buy during your road with the service workers?
Try to use localhost.
It's a cheaper way.
Yeah.
They are always infinitely available, right? Cool. Okay. Thanks again, Maxim. It was a really nice, great session. Lots of cool stuff there, and this should be it. So, for all people who are here listening to us, please join us now for the networking party. And we just posted a link to WonderMe, and hope to see you there. And be sure to check out frontend-RheinMain.de. There will be some relaunch happening hopefully this year. We know that the website is not that maybe nice or modern looking anymore, but you will find quite some content there. And be sure to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Also subscribe to our newsletter, and also follow us on Twitter, which is the main communication channel, basically. And stay tuned for the 24th of June. Really, next week, we'll have all the details on the talk. This will be a really cool highlight on CSS stuff. That's it.
Don't forget to make your website PWA when you refresh.
Of course. Yeah. This will be offline first, right?
Yes. let's agree, folks. Then, if that's possible, I come to introduce what's new in Workbox 7 personally to your place.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
When is the release
Yeah.
planned for Workbox 7? So do we have some time pressure now?
I think
Maybe we can wait a bit until our homepage is finished with the release of Workbox 7, right? Until we tested maybe the latest beta features in our homepage. Okay, that's a deal.
We can do hands-on version. So how to take your website and create PWA out of it using Workbox 7. That's the plan.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, I interpret this as a deal, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. Cool. And yeah, now you're hooked, Manuel. I'm already excited for Workbox 7, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thanks again. See you on Wonderme.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, see you in the next session in 4 weeks, roughly. Enjoy your day in the evening.
Bye-bye, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you.